welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen June, and so thrilled to have her here on this lovely summer morning. Good morning. And for those of you who don't know Dr. June, she's a true expert in the field of autism, I believe, the preeminent expert in the field of autism. But beyond that, I always like to remind all of us and her that she's a visionary in this field. She's been working in this field for more than 30 years. I know I usually don't do years. Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to it turning 40. It'll be a couple of years.
Well, that's amazing. And only someone whose skin is as good as yours would look forward to saying, I've been working in this field for 40 years.
The horrible thing about, I love, you know how much I love doing this show with you, but if it is documentation of the past 5 years of our lives, Shannon, you know, and if you go back to some of the early years, I'm like, good Lord, like the last 5 years have been tough.
Can I just talk about the last 5 months? I'm doing a PowerPoint right now about Autism Live, and I was taking clips from different things to pop into the PowerPoint. And there was one, I put on a little weight recently, and was it noticeable? It was like Shannon has eaten a small village. Looking at 5 months ago and looking at now, I was like, hello.
Oh, it's so hard.
Got to get it together. And I'm going to try to get it together this summer. But starting now. But it really, yes, it does. I went, whoo. And of course, it's embarrassing. And I apologize to everyone who's watching, but we have not changed the opener to the show. So it still has me 5 years ago with dark curly hair. Wow. And people watch it now. I had a little niece who watched it and said, who's that?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Well, it's time to change the opener, isn't it? A long time ago.
That's funny.
But yes, it does document in the best possible ways and in the most humbling ways.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In any case, it points out too the amount of time that you've donated over the last 5 years to be able to speak to our families and the people who are. I shouldn't say it isn't always parents who write in. Sometimes it's teachers. Sometimes it's grandparents. Sometimes it's practitioners in the field of autism, and we welcome all of you in this format to ask the questions. We do give the disclaimer that there is no expert in this field or any other medical field that could give individual specific advice in this format. It just doesn't lend itself to that because you don't, even at the level of expertise that you're at, you need to, have more time, know more back history, have an opportunity to see the person.
To be fair, that's right. To be able to give relevant responses, that's right. It's important.
So no individual specific advice, but what we get is great information that is general in nature that helps, I think, all of us to be able to know what the next question is, what the next course of action is, and it prepares you when you are talking to an expert to know what to ask next, and saves time. And honestly, we get the best education at your feet, and that's a really good use of time. So thrilled that you're here. I want to jump in. I promised last week that I would start with this question because I think it's relevant to many of us dealing with summer and electronics and things of that nature. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, my 13-year-old son is home for the summer. He has ASD and is in a self-contained classroom mostly for his problem behaviors, which are escape from demand maintain, so I was told. How can I work on compliance and following a schedule at home? He thinks he can watch TV all day, but I don't want him to. He is pretty strong, so I'm not sure how I can get him to follow my instructions with just telling him. Any guidance is greatly appreciated.
Of course. And let's just start and let's not anticipate. I read some anticipation of, apprehension, I would say, in this question, because it sounds like you're worried about placing any demands. So let's just start and see how things go. And I think what you should do is put together a visual schedule. My recommendation is make it very light. So start with, as usual, what I suggest is to start with very minimal demands, high reinforcers, and then gradually change that, so that the child doesn't become reactive or even aware. So what I would do is I would just take a baseline and look and see, what do you feel is an appropriate time for your son to wake up, as opposed to when does he actually wake up? And start with when he wakes up as the baseline. Let's say, I don't know, he's a teen, so let's say 10:30, 11, who knows? And then let's say for you, it would be more appropriate for him to wake up at 9. So right now, it's perfectly fine for him to wake up at 11. Over the course of the next, let's say, 2 months or 2.5 months, whatever summer you have, you're going to shoot for him waking up, 5-minute increments earlier. And that's all you really do. You wake him up at, 10:55, then 2 days later at 10:50, then a day later at 10:45, and so on and so forth. And you gradually get to where you want to go. Now that's just his waking. For the rest of his day, you just do a visual schedule of, okay, you wake up, you have X amount of time to have breakfast, and then you have, let's say, certain activities. You need to come up with those activities. Now, I don't know anything about your child's functioning level or what you mean when you said he's home for the summer, which would imply that he might be somewhere else the rest of the year. So please figure out a schedule that does not involve too much demand. So initially, maybe, let's say if you're scheduling between 11 a.m. and, I don't know, let's say he goes to sleep at 9 p.m., then you have roughly 10 hours of time to schedule. Make sure that in the beginning he has a lot more free time. So of the 10 hours, perhaps you want to do, I don't know, like 1 hour of some sort of physical activity initially, followed by a whole hour of watching TV, followed by, let's say, an hour of something mind, practice, like whether it's academic or something else, followed by a whole nother hour of TV or whatever is his reinforcer. Let's allow, there's a couple of things about summer. One is, it is summer. Like sometimes we think about summer and we think about, oh, let's just use this to catch my child up or pack them with whatever I can. And the truth is, your child also needs a little bit of a break. So it's perfectly fine. It's not like you're, doing anything negative or bad to allow him to have a little bit of time off. So, while I agree you don't want your child sitting in front of the TV for 3 months straight, you do want him getting out and so forth. Figure out the things you absolutely need from him. So like a certain level of physical activity, a certain level of maybe mental activity, a certain level of social activity, and then infuse them into the day with a high level of reinforcer. Now his reinforcer might be watching TV, it might be something else, I don't know, but put those in so it's a very reinforcement rich schedule. And then you can gradually increase your demands a little bit and reduce the reinforcers. But, again, keep in mind that this is the summer and it's perfectly okay for your child to have more reinforcers than he would during the normal year. And then all I can suggest is if you want to teach new activities and new skills, think of things that he doesn't really have the opportunity to do over the course of the year. Like teach him making a sandwich, like basic cooking stuff. Teach him like a craft maybe, or a musical instrument, or things that or painting, something that he might not engage in during the course of the year, and try to make it more of an interesting and fun activity, perhaps with you. A lot of times our kids will definitely do stuff with us if we have the time. And the reason that they've started to turn to TV as a reinforcer is just because we often don't have time for them.
Yeah. I want to say, too, that there's a big meme that started on Pinterest and then it kind of made its way to Facebook that people have been posting that's neurotypical parents, but they show this, here's what you have to do each day before you get screen time. And it's a checklist, and there are 6 or 7 of them that are out there. And it's meant for kids that are neurotypical. It definitely would have to be changed for each one of our kids. But it reminded me that this is something that everybody is dealing with, that all of our kids are drawn to the screen, whether it's the TV, the phone, or their computer, or the video game thing. And it was, I think Nancy and I are going to try to have time to talk about this in the next hour about how you customize that for a kiddo on the autism spectrum. But Jem and I sat down together and made a schedule that he didn't entirely agree with me on some of the things on it. That one of the things on his list is that he has to spend 20 minutes doing something musical, and he was like, "Well, I don't want you to legislate that. I like doing that. I don't want it to have to be a requirement." I said, "Let's just try it for a week." He's had such a ball on the piano. Right. And, I pointed out to him that the things on the list are not all, because on the neurotypical list, it was do chores, it was these kinds of things. And I think that has to be shifted for our kids that are on the spectrum. But because my son has to be reminded there are things that you enjoy besides screen time. And once he's doing them, he really enjoys them. So we're going to try to talk more about that later.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Shannon. And I think also, we often refer to these, what I call adaptive skills or daily living skills, as chores.
Yeah.
And that puts a negative connotation on them to begin with. And it's kind of like, I'm reminded of Little House on the Prairie, have you done your chores?
Yeah.
It's a different thing. It's like some of this stuff is teaching our kids to live independently, And especially for our kids on the spectrum, it's really important for them to actually learn those chores, because that is learning how to live independently, and some of it is fun. My daughters have always accompanied me on grocery shopping and cooking and stuff like that, so they're both very capable in that area, whereas my son has never really, he's the one that empties the car, but it's like he hasn't learned a lot of stuff just by being around for that. So these are things that are important too, and so think of it that way, and it can be quite enjoyable.
Yes. I think part of what spurred the conversation between Nancy and I is that my son's been out of school for 2 weeks, and as he was doing his last week, I was like, oh, thank goodness, I can't wait until he's out of school. And I think today is Wyatt's last day, and Nancy's been like, oh no.
That's right.
And I've said, oh, we got to talk about this. And she said, why do you love the summer so much? And I said, because we get to make our own schedule. We get to be the captains of what's happening, and I don't have to be on. I love school, and I love when my son is in school, but I'm on somebody else's timeline.
Exactly.
And that's a drag.
It is.
I love
absolutely.
being on. I love setting the schedule, and we usually, in years past, we had a visual schedule.
That's right.
Now he has it on his phone in
there
notes. But and he gets to check off and he gets to choose when he does those things. He can do it the night before or the morning of, and report to me. So this can be customized for our kiddos in lots of different ways. But
that's right.
I definitely think they've got to have some free time, and they have to have some guidelines about how much of the screen time.
That's right.
Because we will lose them down that rabbit hole. All right, I'm moving on to the next question. Good morning. My son has ASD and is going into 5th grade next year. He really struggles in school with starting his work and has a lot of escape behaviors to get out of pretty much all subjects. He's very goal-oriented outside of the classroom and loves making up quests to achieve with his activities. He likes bike riding, video games. How can we translate this drive to achieve to the classroom? He also has a major anxiety over any type of test that is timed. He will know the material, but as soon as he finds out that it has a time limit, he shuts down, and thank you.
Yeah, so, this is, first of all, let me just say how much I love that our viewers all are using behavioral lingo like it's nothing.
Yes.
The first one is these are escape maintained, and this one is has a lot of escape. I love it. It's great. A lot of our behaviors, our kids' challenging behaviors, are typically escape maintained behaviors, which basically, for those viewers who are not familiar with this terminology, means that the behavior is done in order to escape a demand or some sort of activity that is supposed to be taking place. And it's not uncommon, because our kids don't, if you think of typically developing kids, they often want to escape things as well, and they just deal with it in other ways, right?
Adults want to escape from things.
Oh my gosh.
We all want to do this.
We all want to escape, that's right. And what happens, I think, a lot of times is that our kids don't know how to manage their schedules well enough so that essentially they, try to do various challenging behaviors to express to us, I want out. This is a very common thing for a child to have figured out, that I don't want to be in the classroom because the classroom is where demands are made. It's almost verbatim what you just said earlier, which is I kind of want to do my own thing. I want to do my own quests. I don't really want to do the agenda they have in mind for me. But like anything else, the issue here is the same exact thing that we do with every behavior in dealing with using ABA. Essentially, you increase reinforcers and decrease demand, and then the escape behavior will be eliminated. It's always that. So what is it in the classroom that is not reinforcing enough for him? He is not receiving enough reinforcement from that activity. So essentially the question is, how much of what goes on in the classroom can you reduce, and how much of the reinforcers that he receives can you increase? Now, one example that you've brought up is the timing issue. The timing issue is an anxiety issue, and it's very common for a lot of kids. It's not just kids on the spectrum. Anything that is it's common for me. Like, let me just tell you, if I do a game on my phone on an app and it's timed, I hate it. I absolutely hate anything that's timed. I will always mess it up. I will, if I don't know it's timed, I'll often meet the criteria within the time frame. But when I know it's timed, I cannot stop looking at the timer. It freaks me out. So it's just like, oh my God, minutes are going, it's like, it's freaky. So that you just need to get him used to. And I think the way that you need to do that is like teach him, do some fun activities within time frame, maybe games. Games are good because there's a lot of them that are timed. And just teach him to not pay attention to the timer, but just do the best he can within the course, like just ignore the timer. If he could learn to ignore the timer and be more relaxed within that time frame, then he'll do fine. That is an anxiety issue for sure.
Now, in an IEP process, you can easily put
Request
it into your that they aren't timed, that
That's
he can
right.
have as much time as he wants, and you can tell that to him. And that includes standardized testing too. That's an easy accommodation that can be given. Is that
Absolutely.
something we should do for somebody who has anxiety?
It depends on the level of anxiety and the level of functioning. So obviously there's two ways to deal with anything. One is you can modify the antecedents. One is you can, shape the behavior to deal with the antecedents. So what you're suggesting is let's give him the opportunity, let's remove that timer and just give him as much time as he needs. And that could be the right thing for him depending on his skill level. On the other hand, if he's pretty close to being able to handle it like other kids, then I would suggest that you work towards teaching him to be able to work under the contingencies of a timer. You could do a combination as well. You could request more time, but not in infinite amounts of time. It's really up to you and where the child is. Obviously, our goal always is there are certain things in society we have to deal with, right? I know my youngest child, for instance, does develop, and last night she had a bunch of anxiety over the fact that she's overloaded, she's overwhelmed, she's got a ton of stuff going on. But the truth of the matter is, I can go in and request additional time for her, but the issue is she also needs to learn to time herself better from the very beginning of the year. And this is a problem many of our teens experience, is just procrastination. And then you freeze because you've procrastinated too long now, and the load is impossible. And that's, we all go through this at some point or another. In fact, I remember having so much, I had learned through my career, through my educational life of 24 years of studying, how to time myself, right? I had learned how to study so that I would never be overloaded and overwhelmed. You learn that definitely when you're going to a place like UCLA and getting your PhD. You learn to do an adequate amount. And then when I had my first child, Nikki, and she was like in, middle school or something, and I saw that she was not doing that. She was falling behind. I remember feeling anxiety for her. Like, I remember it was bringing up, and it still does with me with Charlie. It's like, why do I have so much anxiety over my kids falling behind? And it's because it's like a reminiscence of the past for me. And it's like, you need to learn. So really for this parent, it really has to do with, is it something that you think your child will accomplish? In which case, yes, you want to help them and you want to support them, but you ultimately want to teach them to live with the normal rules of society. Or is it just going to always be too hard? In which case, absolutely, you have a diagnosis, you can ask for timer removal all the way up to through college. So, that is something that you can do, definitely.
Okay. And then in terms of, I love this idea that he loves a quest. And if there's a way that you can get creative, there are apps that do this with chores. We were just talking about doing chores. Right. There are apps that you can do that it makes, you program in what chore you want them to do. And if they do it a certain number of days, it shows a little character going further towards a reward.
That's right.
That when they get there, and you can specify what the reward is. I'm sure there's something like that for schoolwork too.
Oh, I'm sure there is. And it's really, what you're describing is a basic token economy, right? It's a basic like token chart that we've also taught people how to do, and it's very simple. The amazing thing, the reason our kids love technology is because the reinforcer is built into the activity. It's almost like people who are very good athletes. The reason they become better and better and better is that they have already so much enjoyment out of the actual thing they're doing that additional reinforcers are not necessary. Yeah. They're willing to get up at 6 a.m. and go somewhere and do something every single day because doing it is enjoyable. Now, it's a long shot to think that doing schoolwork is going to be enjoyable. Some of our kids are just academically so advanced. Honestly, I have kids where their reinforcer is algebra, is sit down and do algebra, that they enjoy it so much. But the truth is, with school, look at us. No one in their, who really enjoys getting up and going and doing massive number of classes, right? It's not something any of us really love. The reason we love going to school is not our class content and our homework, it's because we see our friends. And most of our kids don't really have that bond or relationship, so they're going to hate school, right? In this child's case, it might be very much that he actually is more of a social being and enjoys social behavior much more. But again, I go back to break down the demand. So make the schoolwork less demanding, whether it's duration of schoolwork. So like instead of forcing him to do 3 hours before recess, have him do an hour and get a break, or in content, which means you modify the content and he doesn't actually have to do as much as everyone else. Or you get him a tutor and you assist on the antecedent side. So whatever you do, those are the ways to help. And then you increase the reinforcer. As you said, for every hour that he completes, he should actually be able to give himself a sticker at the end of the day. If he has X number of stickers, 10 or whatever, he gets to get money. Or he's in 5th grade, give him money so he can actually go and buy something for himself. Or give him more video games, or give him something that he really enjoys. And that's just what it is. All of life is about balancing reinforcers and demands.
And even, I just want to point out, because you started the conversation by talking about lower the demands, but that's to begin with. And so lower the demand, make the reward, but eventually you move those things closer together so that you can then eventually take the reward away and it's rewarding on its own.
Well, you never really take the reward completely away. You just make it what is normal society, right? So in normal life, why do we go through school? Why do we go through school?
Well, I think it's different for some people. For some people, it's because getting the good grade feels good to them because of all the attention that parents and grandparents give because of it.
That's right.
And because you get a piece of paper at the end that allows you to get a better job.
That's right. I don't think at any point during high school anyone really relates it to a job. It's too far of a reinforcer. I think what it is a number of different things. It's the reinforcement, as you said, of receiving a lot of sort of acknowledgement from your family, perhaps. It's also the reinforcement of not it's the reinforcement of avoiding failure. So if you look at, like, a lot of our kids, they're embarrassed amongst their friends if or stressed because their friends are getting better grades than they are. That's a major punisher. It's an automatic punishment that's in society. So some of our kids are just motivated because they don't want to be the lowest grade amongst their friends. They want to be like their friends. That's that's peer pressure on the positive end, right? So it's a huge reinforcer for our kids. But I think over the course of time, it becomes a lot more that. It becomes a lot more like, kids talk about, what grade did you get? What grade did you get? Wow, he got an A. Yeah. It becomes a lot more the reinforcers of your peer group, as well as the reinforcers of your family still. And then it becomes, once you've finished with high school and so on, with typically developing kids, yes, then there's a sense of direction and pride, and I want to accomplish my goals, and just by being able to check off the next class and the next class towards getting into Columbia or whatever it is, or I'm proud of myself. Self-pride is a very important thing. With our kids, a lot of times it becomes very hard for them to develop that self-pride, because where they're developing their self-pride is somewhere else. Like, for instance, he's really feeling good about himself when he develops a quest in video games. Yeah. And he's getting so much of the reinforcer out of that and he doesn't. And honestly, it's not just our kids, Shannon, it's this generation as a whole. This generation as a whole has a lot more many more avenues of gaining what they would consider success. So for instance, to me, it's not success if you're a YouTuber. Right. But to them, it is huge success, because these are people making tons of money just going on YouTube and posting whatever they want, and it's great, right? Yeah. And it even makes me rethink success, and I'm like, maybe you don't really need an education. Maybe you know what I mean? Right. Like, who knows? But the bottom line is, however the individual defines success also defines how they will get reinforcers. Our kids are often, their minds are very different. They have talents in certain areas. They really don't see the value of the stuff that we see value in. So it becomes kind of punitive to them. And there's a million environmental factors. But having said that, we never do anything unless it's reinforced. Right. Now, people who are resilient and hardworking and diligent are people who can handle less reinforcer and more demand. Like, I look at Nikki, my daughter. She works unbelievably hard. She has jobs. She does honors thesis, this and that, and her reinforcer is avoidance of anything below an A minus. There you go. Her biggest punishment is, I didn't get an A in this. Yeah. And so for her, she's going to always be organized, diligent, and move ahead, because she works really hard for very little reinforcement. But other kids that I know, not to name my own kids, but they need way more reinforcer for, like, they need a party to be thrown if they get a C. You know what I mean? So.
And as a parent, maybe we don't get bogged down in that, but find how much reinforcer do I need for my kid, and then make that happen, and then gradually over time change that.
Absolutely. And you do the best you can, because sometimes there's just not enough reinforcers in the world for our kids to do what we want them to do.
And I think sometimes we just have that conversation in our head where, well, they should want to do it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a waste of time.
A totally waste of time. And sometimes they want to do so many things. Yeah. And sometimes they just don't understand that I have to also finish my classwork, and why that is. Yeah. And it's important. And it's not like you can sit down and reason with any child why they need education. It just doesn't make sense to them when they're younger. But so you have to manipulate the environment, and you have to allow this is Premack again, you have to allow him to do his favorite things only if he does the things that are not favorites, but allow a lot of the favorites and a few of the demands, and then you can gradually change that.
And I have learned at your feet with this, and I've told the story before on the show that in this last year we gave my son he really wanted to have his friends over on a Friday afternoon to play video games and live stream. And so as long as his grades were all B's and A's, he got to do that. And my kid worked overtime
to get that.
You know, was on the honor roll every single quarter this last year, got an award. And you know, and now that was exciting to him. He was like, I got an award, and I'm so thrilled because he's starting to see the benefits of doing that aside from his Friday afternoon crew.
That's right.
But he got there because the reward was the Friday afternoon crew, and he was willing to step over dead bodies to get to the Friday afternoon crew.
That's fantastic.
So, and that was because, you know, that's what he wanted. So figuring out what your kid wants and marrying it somehow as the reward, boy, I definitely see that that's where it's all at. It's exciting, but it's different for each kid. It's not a paint by number. You got to take out your toolbox and figure out your kid and be creative and experiment. We should take a break, and then we're going to come back with more of your questions. So stick with us for more Ask Dr. Doreen.
Welcome back to Smarty. Today I have a special guest with me. What the heck? She's missing!
Here I am!
And what's your name?
Mackenzie.
And what are we doing today?
Making sidewalk paint.
And how do we do that?
I have no idea.
So, the materials we'll be needing
are 2 cups of cornstarch, 1 cup of cold water, 4.5 cups of boiling water. Be careful. A mixing bowl, a spoon, sparkle, and food coloring.
So, the first step we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 cups of cornstarch and put it in the big bowl.
Yes.
Can you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's alright, I'll help you. Step 2, you're going to put the cold water into the bowl.
Cold water into the bowl.
Good job. Step 3, we're going to stir it with a big spoon. Good job. You're going to keep stirring it until it's all the way mixed together. So the next step is adding the boiling water. That's a little dangerous for her, so I'll be doing it myself, 1 cup at a time, stirring it together. You're going to keep an eye on me?
Yes.
So once we're done stirring the cornstarch water, we're gonna start making our dyed paint. So what are we gonna do?
We're gonna put in the dye.
Okay.
And we're gonna put in the sparkles.
All right, let's do it. I'll move this out of the way. All right, it's all you, Mackenzie. So the more food coloring you use, the brighter it's gonna be.
Ooh.
So let's put the sparkles in.
Now we're gonna put the cornstarch in the jar.
All right, do you wanna stir that up?
It looks pretty. We're gonna make a few more colors and we're gonna go paint on the side.
See all the colors in the sky tonight.
Are you excited?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Love is the truest state of mind. Now can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh for Ask Dr. Doreen, and she's answering your questions in real time. We had a question that came in on Facebook, from YouTube. My brother is 15 years old and was diagnosed with mental retardation and autism. He still can't use the bathroom and doesn't speak. He is also having epilepsy and on epileptic medications and risperidone. He is also having trouble sleeping. He won't sleep enough hours, nor will he fall asleep easily. And that's the sum total of what was written. There's, there are questions in there, but there's no obvious question. Where do we start?
Oh my gosh, and I just my heart goes out to this person, so I really wanted to just be able to help them if any possible way, because there's so much going on in their life.
Yes.
And I guess, Shannon, sometimes when you read these texts or emails or whatever they are, it shows us the extent of what some people are dealing with. This is not even a parent.
Yeah.
This is a
Sibling.
sibling who's writing in, and I'm just like for a moment thinking of this individual's life and thinking, okay, this is a brother who is 15, has ASD and MR and epilepsy, and is and no sleep,
Right.
and is on risperidone. So that means they have a lot of different behaviors, and I'm guessing this individual probably has aggression, which is why they're on something like risperidone.
Yeah.
You know, I guess the short version of my response is you alone can't really help this. When we talk about some of our 3 and 4-year-olds and we say it takes a village,
Yeah.
or we're talking when you're at this age and you have so many different issues going on, you know, it takes a city, you know, a big city to help. And I think what you need to do is focus your energy on trying to first develop a team for yourself. And it's wonderful of you that you are trying to help your sibling, but I think you should also, like, you know, I don't know where your parents are in the game, but right now you should probably try to get a team of other people that might be dedicated to your sibling. Whether they are parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins, perhaps, maybe 3 or 4 people, and then you all sit together and you discuss this as a project, because there's so much to be done here. And some of the different projects are, how do we get his sleep under control? How do we teach him some skills? And how do we make sure that the epilepsy is under control? So the sleep portion is pretty easy to deal with. There are really good homeopathic and pretty benign medications like melatonin that you can take, or that will help him with sleep. The epilepsy is very important that you be consulting with a good physician to maintain that under control, because every time we have a seizure, a lot of our kids lose skills when they have seizures. So it's really important to maintain that under control. And then hopefully, if you are able to, the MR and the mental retardation ASD means nothing. It just means that you got to be familiar with the symptoms of ASD. But other than that, you know, a good place to start would be training yourself and the team. And there I would recommend going to IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, and their website is ibehavioraltraining.com. And if you go there and you start learning about how to handle challenging behaviors, what is autism to begin with, how do we deal with it, and what are some of the goals, and then you can go on Skills, which is our other website, and there you can actually answer a lot of questions about your sibling so that you can get a profile of all the different things to teach. You don't even have to really go that far initially. If you just get the training from IBT, you'll learn so much about autism that you'll be able to list the challenging behaviors. And really what you should all do is list challenging behaviors, and those are the things you want to reduce, and list skill deficits, and those are the things you want to increase. And all you really do is you use those techniques that you learn in IBT to make that happen. You want to reduce certain behaviors like, I don't know, hitting, tantruming, whatever, aggression, self-aggression, running away, whatever it is, and you want to increase certain skills like communication and social behavior and attendance and patience and waiting and new skills, you know, just learning things, content. And so you manage those two things, and if you have a team and you all train together, honestly, you'll be able to do this. It is possible. It's just not possible for one person. And I'm not even saying one person, you. I'm saying me. If it was me and someone gave me right now a 15-year-old with MRASD, epilepsy, and sleep disorder, I don't think I would be able to handle it. I would, you know, given the rest of my life. So I really, really recommend that you build a team first and that you all try to work together to try to learn some stuff. It'll also help you because I would imagine you need some support and your family needs some help and support as well.
And depending on the state that you're in, it's very likely that your brother is covered by insurance.
Mm-hmm. I was imagining them to be international. I don't know why.
Oh, interesting. But but you know, it's very possible that there are things in place to help you to get some of the funding to be able to start the team.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes that's a thing as well.
Absolutely
And if you
right.
want to write to us and tell us where exactly you are, I can hook you up with some people who will understand what the resources are in wherever you are in the world. And
Definitely.
that's open to everybody. You can email me at s.penrod, PENROD, at autism- that's the dash, the line in the middle, live, LIVE.com. And thank you for writing in and for being such a good sibling. I want to continue on with a question about a 3-year-old. My son is 3, recently diagnosed with autism, and is verbal. He had a speech evaluation done. Why the school speech therapist who said he did not qualify for speech therapy? Most of the time, I can only understand about half of what is said, and a stranger can interpret maybe 30% or so. Someone mentioned an iPad with a communication app, but I don't want him to rely on that and stop speaking altogether. He stopped altogether last summer, and we never understood why. Should I try a communication device? He has aggressive behaviors and meltdowns frequently, which I think might be due to not being able to communicate well. What should we do? And thank you very much. I find this very frustrating that now speech and language pathologists have moved into this place where so many of the kids that they're getting have autism and are nonverbal, that, you know, when it used to be in days past, if somebody wasn't even on the spectrum, and if they were speaking but it wasn't intelligible, they were speech. You got to get speech so that we can understand, because if people can't understand you, you get frustrated, and why would you take the time and energy to speak if it doesn't get you the response?
That's right.
And now all of a sudden schools are saying, oh no, your kid is verbal, they don't need speech and language, they'll figure it out on their own apparently.
Yeah.
It makes me want to run screaming through the streets.
It's horrible. It's terrible. And I wanted to kind of refocus this parent and say, your focus right now is not, should not be, and I know it's hard to hear this, but your focus right now should not be what kind of app or communication device or whatever I find for my child. Your focus should be going after the school and forcing them to actually give your child services. Now, speech, even if you get speech services right now, which you should, if your child is 50% unintelligible, you should, and I don't know why they said he's not eligible. But my point is that even if you get the services, the speech services, the maximum you will get is 3 hours a week, the maximum. Probably 2 of those 3 hours will be group. Now, that is not enough for your child to overcome whatever it is that he's experiencing right now. What he really needs, he's 3 years old, and he is the perfect candidate. If he's 3 years old and verbal, he is the perfect candidate for a child who has the most positive outcome with intensive, comprehensive ABA, applied behavior analysis. So what you need to do, depending on where you live in the United States, is that you need to focus on getting your child right now a 40-hour ABA program. If you get a 40-hour ABA program, I'm not even concerned about speech, because the speech and language work will occur within the context of your ABA program. Now, how do you get that ABA program? You will need to either go after insurance, which will be your first course, and you should have no problem. If your child has ASD and is 3 years old, you will have no problem getting at least 2 years of 40 hours a week of ABA. So that's your first point. If you can't get insurance due to whether you're not covered or you're in a state that still doesn't mandate it or whatever it is, then you need to follow up with your school through an IEP and talk to them about the Free and Appropriate Education Act, which says they need to fund ABA in order for your child to be able to actually receive the appropriate education that he or she needs. So one way or another, you need to get the funding, and that's where your focus should be. And if you have more questions about that, write into us.
Yeah.
We can always help guide you if we know where you are.
There are some states too where you can get a type of insurance. If you don't have the right insurance, you can purchase the right insurance, and it's expensive,
That's right.
but it's a lot less expensive than paying for a
for it
baby.
yourself.
So that might be something to have a conversation about as
And
well. But please
you've
feel
had some lawyers on this show, I think, talk about getting funding. Have you not? Or
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways. People are being very creative. It's a very interesting time we live in because there are a group of people who have the funding and are taking their kids and getting the therapy, and their kids are flying. There are a group of people who are taking their kids, don't know what they have, and going, 15 hours is enough. And I want to find each and every one of those people, knock on their door and say, let's have a talk.
Yeah.
Because they're ruining it for everyone else.
Right.
Because they're not really getting their kids the kind of help that they need, and they're preventing insurance paying for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the statistics come out and go, it helped some of the kids, it didn't help others.
That's what I've been
You're
saying.
messing it up for everybody.
That's what I've been saying for so many years, Shannon, is that, it's like taking a medication that's been approved for 40 milligrams and taking it at 20.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to help some kids and it's not going to help others. And then the FDA will turn around and say, oh, this medication doesn't really work. Guess what? ABA doesn't work unless it's done the appropriate number of hours.
Full prescription.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you can achieve somewhat with every additional hour, but you're just not going to get to the highest output for your child, the highest capability of your child. And after your child hits a certain age, let's say 6 or 7, A, the brain is not that malleable after 7. B, there's no research that supports comprehensive 40-hour programs after age 7. And C, as a result of that, insurance companies will not fund you comprehensively anymore. It's only before age 6 or 7 that you have an opportunity to get these 40 hours. And you only really have it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because research, again, there's just not enough research. Now, deep down, do I know that 40 hours is going to help everyone forever? Yes, I do. But there's no science behind, there's no research published to say, oh, a child who receives 40 hours for 5 years does better than one that receives it for 2 years.
Right.
And unless that sort of stuff is published, we can't really go back and force the payers to pay it. So value the fact that your child is 3, and if you have coverage, please, I'm begging you to get 40 hours and get it today.
Do the full prescription. But then the next category of people are people who are left out in the cold because they either
have
have
nothing.
insurance, but it's self-funded, so they don't have it, and they're looking at the other people going, you're seriously not using all your hours, and they want to shake them. And they're in this in-between space. But I think that a lot of the people in that in-between space are really buying a vowel and saying, how can I pursue this? And the squeaky wheels are getting coverage. They're writing
of
letters
course.
to their insurance companies saying, really? Because, I'm going to have a lawsuit against you later on.
Absolutely.
To show that you did this wrong. And case by case, people are getting funding for that.
Yeah.
They're finding lawyers, and we have lawyers who have taken on some of those cases to pursue and say that their child deserve it. They're finding very creative ways. They're paying for insurance on the side. But I have said from the beginning, and this is what was said to me when I first met the family who got me started at CARD, was they said, make up your mind that you're going to do this no matter what. And then as the obstacles come, you go, look, it's an obstacle. I know what to do with this. I got to go over, under, around, through, but I'm not stopping. And the parents that do that get what their kids need, and those are always the ones who have mental health later. It's hard. I don't think they have mental health during, because that's off the table. But I always said, I want to be able to stand there when my son is done with school and say, we did everything.
Yeah.
And if I can say that later on, then my head will be okay and my gut will be okay. Totally. If I go, I chimped out on this, or I'm not living with that. I'm not doing that.
That's
Just
right.
make up your mind.
And I think it is that same attitude, Shannon, that makes you be a parent who's excited about the summer. Because really what happens is when you are, it's pretty much the same thing we're talking about with regards to our kids and homework. It's like either you're behind the wave or you're ahead of it. And, with parents, when they make the decision and the commitment to do this over and beyond everything else, they get it done. It's like anything else. When you do make the commitments to the child and you say, I'm going to get through whatever obstacles, I'm going to make this, happen, and you are ahead of the wave, and you can actually make it happen because now it's in your hands. You can schedule things and coordinate it and make it happen. And sometimes when we just avoid short term, like we're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, oh, I have to do that, blah blah blah, then what happens in the long run is we procrastinated so long that time has passed.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate and it's sad, and I don't ever want to blame any parents at all in any way, because we're all overwhelmed and we all do the best we absolutely can. There's a million things I would have done differently with my kids as well if I had the opportunity. But it is what it is, and like, you have a 3-year-old, for this particular viewer, get on the ball and get your 40 hours right now.
Make up your mind. I always loved the phrase, if you're going after Moby Dick, pack the tartar sauce.
Yeah.
And there were times in my life when I would go out and buy a jar of tartar sauce and put it up on the shelf to remind me we're going after Moby Dick.
That's a great one.
The tartar sauce is there because we're going to need it, because we're going to get there.
Because we're going to win.
We're going to get there. Doesn't matter. You are going to meet obstacles, but it's like, oh, and you know what it does? It quiets everything down in your mind. You go, oh, there's an obstacle. Not like, whoa, is me? Why is this happening? Because that was happening to me for a while, and then I went, oh, nope, we're doing this. Okay, do we have time? We have time. We got 5 minutes. We got time for one more question. And they're all good. But you know what? This is a short one. My daughter has autism and just got braces. She needs to have 4 teeth pulled. She will be under anesthesia due to sensory issues. Which form of anesthesia is better, an IV shot or gas anesthesia?
I don't think it's, first of all, I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. I don't have experience with this. This is not my field of education.
Okay.
And I don't think that it will matter. I think that both experiences initially might be a little bit scary for her. And whether you do the shot or the gas, you probably want to prep her. We've done a lot of training for people on how to prep medical procedures, and it starts with just literally driving to the doctor's office where she's going to have the procedure and going up and maybe getting a candy and then coming down so that she doesn't get scared on the day the procedure is happening. If she's going to get an actual IV, we actually go to the point of practicing putting a tourniquet on, using a pen, that sort of just to show her the process. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, if you get her to the point of an actual needle, like to the point, like you practice everything and you do put a tourniquet on and you do something like just this or wherever they're going to like learn what they're going to do and mimic it all the way to almost the end, right? Where the actual needle is. It will help. And then what you're doing is you do those steps. This is called systematic desensitization procedures. You do each step and you reinforce it and you pair it with calming, like music, headphones, something that will help her be calm. That will be very helpful. Having said that, gas anesthesia is often very scary for kids too, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what this is. They don't know the feeling. I mean, I remember when I was anesthetized for my tonsils, I was like 3 or 4 years old in England. And I remember they told me count backwards, right? And I was nervous that I wouldn't be able to count backwards. Right. Like, you just don't know what is the... So, I think that you just need to kind of familiarize your child with the process when she gets there. And then, of course, I'm sure that your dentist or surgical dentist will be able to give you a lot of feedback on which one is better for your child's particular physiology. One of our old parents is a really good dentist, Susie Kaplan, Dr. Susie Kaplan. I think she has multiple practices in California. Look her up. She focuses on individuals with autism. So she would be a wonderful person to have a conversation with.
I think I'll call her and see if she'd be willing to do the show.
Yeah, you know who she is, right?
No.
She's Andy's mom.
Oh,
yeah.
Fabulous. All right, well, we'll reach out to her and see
she's excellent.
if
She's
she'd
awesome.
be willing to come and be on the show.